Ladies and gentlemen, we are live on BiggerPockets Facebook, BiggerPockets YouTube. I'm Steve Rozenberg, your host. I'm an investor, entrepreneur, author, speaker. Also, I am the vice president of investor education for Mind Property Management, managing, I believe, about 8,000 properties across the U.S. And today we are going to have a great show. Very good friend of mine on. We'll talk a little bit about how we met. Which was actually through BiggerPockets, which is very cool. And we are going to do a deep dive into understanding all the different ways about investing in real estate. You know, I always tell people the great thing about real estate is there's no rules. You can do whatever you want. The bad thing about real estate is there's no rules. You can do whatever you want, and you don't know that you did it wrong until maybe you're in a lawsuit, a judge, lost all your money, whatever the case may be. But it's great because you can do so much with real estate and so many things that you never really think about. You know, you sit there and go like, wow, I never thought of that. So for those of you watching, make sure that you leave comments. Let us know where you're watching us from. I know we get people from all over the world, which is awesome. And I think it's great that as investors in this world that we live in, it is a very, very small world. You know, I mean, it's not as big as people think. You run into people and you cross paths with people that know people. And it really is amazing of how we are so like-minded and how we all think alike. And we're all here to help people, I think. I think there's some people out there that maybe have done some stupid things that take advantage of people. But I think all in all, investors as a whole, we're very much trying to help people because not that I know of, a school exists that you could go to real estate school and learn these things. I mean, these are truly the nth degree of education. It's like getting a black belt in real estate when you start talking to people like AJ and these other people. And you learn like, wow, like, I mean, when AJ and I met and he was telling me all the stuff that he does, and I was blown away because I'm thinking to myself, holy crap, I did not even think of that as an asset class as big as it is. And so for the people out there that are thinking, do I want single family? Do I want apartments? Maybe mobile homes? Maybe there's other assets out there, and is there a business in those other assets? So AJ and I met, we were at Brandon Turner's mastermind with Tarl Yarborough and Brandon, and AJ and I met there at the mastermind in Maui, and we got to spend a week together. And I tell you what, man, what a gentleman, what a great guy. You know, we really got to know each other. We talked. AJ's story is incredible. If you don't know his story, I can't even do it justice. I'll let him piece together what he wants to share. But if you're not following this guy, you definitely need to look up this guy because he is probably one of the smartest people I've ever met in a conversation that you're sitting there going like, holy shit, this guy is so smart. I hope he doesn't realize how not smart I am so that he doesn't figure it out. So I'm just going to stop talking and I'm going to listen. So for those of you that talk to someone who's much more intelligent than you, the best thing you can do is stay quiet and just listen and ask questions. And you will learn so much more from that. So AJ, man, thanks for coming on today. I know you're busy. I know you got a lot of stuff going on. How you been, man?
Been awesome. Great to see you again. You are way too nice because everyone that knows Steve knows that is just not true. He is never not the smartest guy around. That is not. But thank you. That was really nice. And yeah, that was such a great meetup in Hawaii and everything, and the connections that we've made and been able to share forward. And you're right, you know, real estate is a small world, and it's reaching out and getting with other people that are smarter than you, that are better than you, that are out doing things. It just opens up horizons that you can't even imagine because you there's nothing that you know, right? It's these like it's behind a curtain.
Yeah.
And then somebody opens it up for you and you're like, whoa, I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't know you could do this.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about real estate too. It's, you know, meeting like you and other people. And it's like, you hear them and you're just like, I didn't even know this existed. There's so much opportunity out there. So yeah, that's awesome. No, I'm from Boise, Idaho. So I started out in sales, but I diversified. We own 1.2 million square feet in self-storage. So roughly right around 150 million in assets. I own several other companies, online businesses, sales companies, services, in other industries that aren't real estate. Commercial real estate, done it all. But we buy everything from bankrupt to Kmart's, buildings that are falling down. We reconvert them and change the asset into another asset type. We really like complex problems because they tend to have way more upside. But we like, when we're looking at real estate, we're heavy on operations. So everything comes back. I didn't actually ever get started in real estate. Real estate came second phase in my career and life. I was focused more on mergers, acquisitions, and the business front. And that's why we picked real estate, because it had so many resemblance of business. And I don't care if you're just an investor. I don't care if it's single family homes. You're running a business. And the better you run that business, the way more upside there is. And so that's what we did. We just came in and thought, let's focus on operations, marketing, capital management, revenue. And we had a good value add strategy that we've stuck with ever since. And it's, me and my partner, who's my father, we started this up, and it was just us. We were figuring this out. We screwed up a lot, and but it takes time. But once you're figuring it out, and as you're listening, and I wish when we would have started, there would have been way more resources like this, because that would have helped me out a ton.
Yeah,
years, a lot of money.
I remember going to the library and getting a library card and checking out books just to figure out these things, which people would be fathomed to understand that you got to actually put your name in on a list to get a book in time to read it, because you're just trying to learn how to do lease options, or there was no internet to buy this stuff. I hate to date myself, but I mean, it really is truly amazing. You meet people like, when we were at that mastermind, we're meeting we're hanging out with Tarl and we're hanging out with all these different people, Brittany up in, Saskatoon, and you're just seeing like all these different assets coming together with people that everybody has a different way of doing something. Everybody's successful in their own right.
Yes.
And you just sit there and think like, wow, this truly is like the Wild West. Like you can make as much opportunity as you choose and see fit. And I think it's so important for people to realize, and I'm curious if anyone watching has done anything outside of the norm. Like you get kind of house hacking and you get those things, which is great, but is that a 1.0 of what you could do? Now, let me ask you this, as we kind of start going, when you are talking about when you were getting going and you talked about the operations and all that, was the actual asset the last piece of the puzzle? Because it sounded like you did everything first and then you said, what are we going to buy now that we have that?
Yeah, when we went into real estate, we went into a focus that, I really wanted my cake and I wanted to eat it too. I wanted residual income that could be more passive, that could be wealth creating, paying down debt, increasing equity that I could recapitalize and deploy later. So I wanted a machine that could repeat a process using cash flows plus equity. But in order to get that, we needed to be able to manipulate revenue, which I was accustomed to in businesses. So I knew that if I went and I bought a business that did $1 million, I could see those revenue drivers. We could enhance the revenue drivers. We could lower expenses, put the right people in the right places, and that revenue goes up, right? Unfortunately, with businesses, though, it can go away. There's a lot more risk, which I found out. I did a deal that was really bad, and I almost lost everything. And thought I need to get smarter. So when we started looking, I needed something to back the revenue, and that's what I really looked at. I needed to own that source of revenue coming in. It needed to be more tangible, and real estate is one of the only places that you can do that, right? Like even if you have a company and you're selling, widgets to people or whatever it may be, you're consulting or whatnot, that revenue come in is owned by other people. You don't own your structure is a legal structure, and you're providing a service and getting it back. Real estate is like a monopoly. You own that house, and that house is yours, right? And real estate that's free and clear is the safest thing ever. But when I looked at it, I needed something that could affect those revenue drivers, and self-storage is more operational heavy because it acts more like retail. So like we got people coming in every single day. We're selling them everything from movings to box, locks, trucks. We can go target people to come in. They're going to leave. We're going to replace them at a higher rate. And then like hotels, we do revenue management. So you got 600 units, and let's just use basic storage unit, 10 by 10s. You may have 150. Everybody in there is paying different prices at any given time. And so dynamic pricing like airlines and hotels and stuff do, this really caught my interest. Because you could take a property that was completely stabilized, doing great, and still have a lot of upside, even if it was matching the market, which a lot of real estate asset classes don't have, right? Right. The similar asset class a mile down the road will get similar rents in commercial and multifamily, other retail, right? They have to price very similar in the market. That's not true with self-storage. Two similar products a mile down the road, they can have 40% different revenue. So it's very interesting. And it's kind
of like sitting on an airplane. You're sitting next to someone in a seat, and you know that you did not pay the same price for seats. Yep. So you're going, why? If you really wanted to know, you may get upset thinking, wait a second, how did you get a deal? And you paid $700, I paid $1,400 for the same seat going to the same destination.
Exactly.
And so, I'm familiar with that. Now, we've got someone, Garrett is asking a question. AJ, do you think strip malls that fold under COVID could be converted into self-storage? And by the way, everybody, if you have questions, make sure you put them in here, because getting a chance to talk to AJ and get this information, I want to know too. So make sure you put some questions in that we can pick his brain a little bit, because I want to hear this as well. So let's start with this one, AJ.
Yeah, conversion. So I have 3 different properties under contract that we're converting right now. All over, we have Midwest, we have them in the Northwest. And so the properties that we're looking at, you have to go through a phase. So converting bankrupt properties don't always mean it's a good deal. So what you have to look at first, in fact, it could be a very, very bad deal. But as long as you understand some basics, it can work. So we look at first single individual unit buildings are better. And what I mean by that is if you have a bankrupt that's parceled into a lot with other, if it's a strip mall, right, everybody needs to be gone, because most of the time the lease agreements with the other tenants will prohibit uses. And almost always they're self-storage and other things, the strip malls, like, you can't utilize them. Now, if the whole thing went bankrupt though, yeah, that's totally different, right? Then you just have to work with the city to make sure that you can. So you can do it. What you need to look for though is replacement cost. As in, if I have to buy this building for $3 million and then I got to put another $3 million into it, so I'm $6 million into that deal, but I could go a mile down the road, buy bare land and build for $4 million. That doesn't make any sense at all. And right. Then you'll have competitors come in that can charge a lot lower. So the short answer is yes, but it is very deal specific. Roofs, so replacement of roofs, HVACs, this stuff adds up quick on these things. And so lots of these buildings are in distress, and the CapEx that has to go into them just to get them to function, not even for, you to use it. I mean, on even a good condition one we bought, HVAC, and the roof, it's like, you're looking at 1.2 million replacement of pipes that were installed in there. You got another 200,000. That stuff can add up quick. So it's just not the price tag.
Okay. All right. Now I've got a question for you, but I'm going to take Luis Ortega's question. He says, what are the primary resources you would recommend to someone getting interested in this? So that's going to lead into my question, because I want you to talk to me like I'm a 3-year-old and explain to me why, how, all that. But let's answer this one first, and then maybe we can go into my question.
Yeah. So I'm going to blend the two together, if you don't mind.
Okay. Cool.
So first of all, I am an absolute self-storage junkie, because I believe it offers, and I don't want anybody that loves their asset class to get mad at me, but I think it offers more opportunity than any other real estate asset class in the world for 2 reasons. First, it's so new. So when you look at self-storage really came around in the 70s. It is the newest asset class that is being funded. And until after 2008, institutional investors really didn't even play in the market. And so all the storage facilities are owned by mom and pops. That's the second thing. Self-storage is completely fragmented. So if 80% of all self-storage facilities, they're not owned by institutional money, where when you look at retail, hospitality, and multifamily, 80% of all those assets are owned by institutions. Well, that means you got to go compete with investment banks. You got to go compete with fund managers. Self-storage, it's the opposite. You're going down and talking to Bob, who Bob owns a storage facility, has some locks on it, really doesn't do a whole lot, and you can buy it, and with very little, you can increase the revenue with nothing special. I'm not talking about dynamic pricing. You just make sure somebody pays the bills, right? And you get good rents. That's just not, terribly available in a lot of asset classes. So I think that's why I like it. I think that where the opportunity is, the primary resources for anyone getting into self-storage, like all asset classes, it's education. It sounds a lot more complicated when you start talking about revenue management. It's not. You're selling a box, right? It's cement floor and walls. So when you're looking at resources, you need to look at more resources on the operations, right? So sales process, what do I do? How do you increase rates? Things like that, the basics of running a self-storage business, because they are businesses. And then you hire somebody and then they run it for you, and you put them in there, right, to run it. But I'd look at ISS, SSA, they're the national associations. They have tons of resources. I'm the keynote speaker for ISS, which is the largest self-storage convention in the world, in a month and a half. And so go to those. They have tons. You can reach out. I have the largest self-storage podcast, which is Self-Storage Income. Look it up. It's we just give away everything and bring in a lot of people and explain a lot of the operations. So yeah, those are a few resources out there.
Okay, so let's go back to me as a 3-year-old here. So let's say that I want to get into storage units here in Houston, Texas, right? And so I start looking around and I see these. Is there, first of all, I guess, is there a typical, I'll put a caveat, is there a typical margin that I should expect, or does that run the gamut depending on my process, procedure, structure, and scale, first of all?
So when I look at investments, particularly in self-storage, one of the things that self-storage has had over the last 6 years is a massive cap rate compression. So when I got started, I thought buying a 9 cap was highway robbery. I was like, no, I'll take this at a 13 cap, right? That doesn't exist anymore. those days are gone. Okay. So now people are asking more like a 5 cap, right? But when you look at margin, I want a 30%, 20 to 30% margin after debt.
Okay.
Wow. So if I'm bringing income, it's coming in. I want to do it. Most of the times when I have to buy, I have to clean it up and maybe improve it. Sure. Because lots of people don't even collect rents in storage facility. They may have 15% delinquency. So half your margin's just at getting people to pay their bill.
Pay the rent.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, I've seen these where, and again, I'm trying to understand this. I've seen these where you've got the people that have motorhomes, boats, some that are air conditioned, people keep their wine. I mean, really, it's people that put their shit of their lives basically somewhere, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Is there one that gives you a better model than the other, or is it indicative of where you're at? So if I'm by the lake, I would maybe have one that I'm looking for boat storage. And is that, do you shy away from those, and do you try to keep them homogenous across all of your storage models?
So see, you asked like the exact questions you need to be asking. Steve, you know real estate so well. This is actually probably one of the best questions I have been asked. And the reason is, Steve's talking about supply and demand. And when people build storage facilities, this is where we find that people make mistakes. They build a ton of 5x5s, which are small units, because if you look at the price per square foot or how much money, it looks good on paper. But then they find out that nobody wants 5x5s, and they have a bunch of empty units. So we purchased a facility for $2.7 million. That facility had half of it was full of 5x5s. It was, I think, 8 buildings, and each building had 30 or 40 5x5s. They were at 50% occupied. They couldn't even hardly keep the doors open. We just went in and broke down some walls and we made different sizes, right? And we got up to 90%. We doubled rates in 6 months because they had just missed what people want. So when I look at what you're doing in storage facilities, whether that's wine storage, anything else, I like a mixture actually of all of them. So I want large sizes. So a perfect example, I don't know if you can see it, but I see
some pictures behind you, man, of some big stuff.
Yeah. So this one right here, indoor storage, you have drive-in parking, you have outdoor pull-up storage. And so when we built this in our radius, nobody had indoor storage. So what that meant was we had a monopoly on the market.
Yeah.
So we filled up the entire property at 85,000 square feet in 3 months. And the reason was people were like, how'd you do that? We said, well, we put something on the market that people needed that wasn't there. So don't make things more complicated, right? It's just, but I like those things can change, Steve. So you got to make sure you're diversified and not all one type. I don't like one type.
Now, when you buy a storage, let's say you buy the land, is there any environmental studies or anything you have to do with that or not?
Yeah. So I look at when we do storage, when we're buying the land, we'll almost always get our phase 1 study and look at environmental that needs to be done. Now, this depends too, because, Steve said it best when you're like, there's a million ways to skin the real estate cat. And self-storage is a perfect example of this. You can look and see what you need. So for one of our things, we said, we're going to have a lot of drive-up RVs. Well, while we're building it, let's just put a pump. A pump, like a dump pump, right? That you pump in, it hooks to the city sewer, but RVs can then come dump instead of having to go do it. And there was a water thing that they could spray off. Cost us virtually nothing, right? To do. Huge value add to the customers. No other facilities had it. But for that, we did need to be careful on the phase 1 study and the environmental to make sure that it was meeting with city code and things like that, because they have to measure how much estimated output is going to be coming in. So
what's the lifetime of a client that you have on average?
These are just amazing questions. You own storage. You have to own storage.
I'm listening to this, and a lot of things are adding up for me. So I'm thinking we have to call AJ after this. So go ahead.
So our average lifetime of a client, on average, I like to say it's between 9 and 13 months, right around there. The numbers get really skewed because you'll have a few people that will stay in there forever.
Sure.
And so they can skew the rest. You got to take those out. Some people are like, the average client's a year and a half. That's not true for the average. So it's usually about 9 months that we see, depending on markets. Some of our facilities, it's more towards a year and a half. But I'd estimate 9 to 13 months on average is probably when how long you'll keep a client.
And what's the average, the target average age that you go after? I'm guessing it's somebody who has a house, has extra stuff, right? They've got, whether they've got a motorhome, a boat, a plane, whatever the case may be. Like, is there a certain age and income bracket that you go, that's our target?
Yeah, this is a highly debated question. This is one that has really shocked the industry overall, because there was a wave growing 10 years ago that said millennials don't need storage because they don't like things. We didn't believe that premise at all. In fact, we thought it was exactly the opposite. So we changed our business model to focus on mobile advertising online to attract millennials. And so really you have millennials that are just starting families, right? Or they may be buying homes, or they are usually in a smaller home. They're starters. They live in apartments.
Or in the city.
Yes, they're in the inner cities. Exactly. And so they don't have a lot of square footage. But more importantly, to add on square footage, it's super expensive. Right. So instead they rent. And 2, they want to be mobile. I want to be able to move around. Millennials are moving all over the place. So they're actually they're right now today, the largest consumer of self-storage. Next. Yeah. Next is baby boomers. And as the baby boomers are all retiring, they're giving their stuff to millennials, which they're just putting in a storage facility because they're not selling their mom's wedding dress and all this stuff. So they're moving in their stuff to self-storage. And as those people are downsizing, they're using self-storage. So people thought that there would be a self-storage apocalypse. the opposite couldn't have been true. All the economic factors are actually pushing for more consumption because of tightening regulation in real estate and what you can do, what you can't do. You can't HOAs, everything like that. Real estate prices increasing, so people can't have as much space. All those economics, retirees, and then plus millennials that are moving, living smaller, not as big as families, they all bode very well to the economics of self-storage.
All right. How about virtual offices in the storage world? Is that something that do these swords cross? Do these worlds collide at all? Like now you got people they're going, hey, I'm going to work here for a little bit. I mean,
I've got a conference room, and this picture right here, there's a ginormous conference room. And what people do, so you got to remember the advent of online businesses has dispersed ownerships, and what we're seeing with COVID-19, all of a sudden people are like, I can work from anywhere, I can live at home, but lots of people like medical suppliers, drug reps, things like that, they actually have like equipment they need to put in, and they don't care what the price is. They don't care because it's the company paying for it. So they go, listen, I don't really care. I want it to be close to my home, and I want it to be a good facility, and I'm running the corporate card on it. And so virtual workplace is a huge bonus to storage. See, I told you, you've definitely you're lying to everybody. He has to own storage. And all the questions he's asking is exactly what you should ask for and look. And you're right. Every one of those things bode well for storage.
All right, so we got a lot of questions here. So keep the questions. I'm gonna. Those are my personal questions that I had. Obviously, now we've got how far apart should storage units be from each other? How big is a typical catchment area? I'm not sure what that means for storage unit.
So how far should storage units be apart from each other? I think what you're asking is, do you mean the actual facilities? So if you're going to buy one, how far should you be from another one? The best way to look at this, and the way you should look at this, is we look in storage at a square foot per capita. That's how we determine demand. Certain markets consume more storage than other markets, and they will have a higher square foot per capita. Where you buy and where you place your storage facility should be in locations that have low square foot, right? It's simply supply and demand.
Sure.
That's the number one thing in self-storage. Supply and demand rules all. If you get that wrong, you are going to be in trouble. Units will sit empty. There's a finite people that use it. It's right around 10% of the population, and it hasn't hardly even moved in decades. So we know exactly what that population is.
You know, it's interesting. My brother owns a car dealership in Los Angeles, and he was telling me that, as an example, they use a lot of data and AI to figure things out of what cars they need on the lot. And he said they can look at births and people giving birth to, and they know that people are going to be trading in their Camaros and Corvettes for the minivan. So they'll stock minivans when they see the spike in data. And he says that it's all the data. So this data is exactly what you're saying. It's telling you a story if you're paying attention to it.
Okay, so
that's cool.
Yes, and when we look at data, and this is one of the reasons I like self-storage, okay? Now, after I explain this, first of all—
I'm liking it too, man. I'm digging this.
So when we look at data, when we're looking at price per square foot, we can analyze and see trends in people's habits online. So I can see if we have systems in place that will show what the attitudes and behaviors is someone. If someone keeps looking at houses, if someone's looking at rental apartments, we target those individuals. Now, two, we know certain individuals pay more than others.
Right.
We know that if you have a home and you have a full-time, if you're a homeowner and you have a job, right, and you're married and have kids, and you live within a 1 mile radius, you are going to pay a lot more than somebody that lives 3 miles that's single. So what we do is we target those people, and we charge the highest rate to them. After you fill up there, you can go outside that, and we look at the trends and what they're paying. But all of that is simply defined by, we look at square footage on the market, the price at that square footage, the demand that's left over. Then you look at what people will pay. There's 3 types of people in storage, everybody. Don't forget this. You have people that care only about price. I don't care. I just need a cheap place to put stuff. You care about people that care only about convenience. It needs to be close to me, right? And then you have people about quality that want quality. I buy storage facilities that people have filled up. The owner filled it up with people that cared about price. They fought on price. Then I kick out a lot of those people and I fill them up with people that care about quality, and you immediately double the rates. It's not nearly as complicated. You got to keep it simple, and it works.
That's the term dynamic pricing, right? That's when you go towards the dynamic pricing. You're saying, okay, this is not as much. Now, do you ever grade your owners? I mean, I know you have a lot of them, obviously, but do you like, okay, this person, A through D. A is a great client. They pay on time, they never bitch, and they refer people to me. B is a great client, but they don't refer anyone. C, this person kind of complains a lot. D, this guy's a pain in the ass and I hate. So, like, do you ever do that where you?
100%. When people are annoying, and two, when people are rude to my managers, I'm very protective of my employees. We will first of all, if they're rude or we don't like them or whatever, we just kick them out. But second, though, if they're rude, but it's like, they're just a jerk, we just double the rates. If they want to pay, we'll deal with it. If not, get out. We don't care. Okay, so here's a question. We do grade it.
Yeah, good. That's cool. Man, I'm getting into this, man. I'm in, man. So
you are.
All right, so what kind of this one, that zero, interesting name. What kind of legal rights do you have when controlling rates and delinquency? That's a good question.
That is a great question.
Yeah.
This one, that zero.
Yeah.
Good question. So when you look at legal rights when controlling rates and delinquencies, in most states, the legal rights is, this is my property. I'm going to do whatever I want. If you have a problem with it, you're going to leave. Because how storage works is, it's like, let's say you own a home and you have Bob that comes and says, hey, I really want to put my stuff on your driveway. You say, okay, but anytime I want you, I'm kicking you out and stuff. But if you want to pay me $5 a month, you can set some stuff there. And then 3 days later, you change your mind. You have every right to kick him off your property. That's how storage works. Now, where the laws really kick in is on auctions, delinquencies, and kicking people out. Contrary to popular belief, we make no money on auctions. We lose money every time. And so it's not a source of revenue generating for us. It's a big time loss. Even if we sold it and let's say somebody bought it for $1 million, I don't get it. I can't even keep the money. So all I can keep is the rent owed. I can't take opportunity costs, nothing. So when the auctions, you have a certain set time that is dedicated by state, and the state will say within a certain amount of days, you have to communicate to them and you have to give them ample notice. Then it has to go on a public, you have to announce it, you have to let them know it's going to auction, and then you have to hold the auction on the date that you informed everybody at. It's a public option. I can't buy any of it. I legally can't buy any of it, and I can make no money off it. And that means my people have to spend time, and the whole time that person was in the unit not paying us, that's a loss to us. And I don't think we've ever, there's probably a couple times, but we have auctions every single week, and we lose a lot of money on them.
So, okay, just so I understand, so you cannot reimburse staff time, right? Is that correct?
No.
So
no, you can't reimburse anything. Only the rent.
Rent due, okay, yep. But late fees, none of that can be reimbursed?
Oh, yes, sorry, excuse me. Late fees you can, and there are ways that we play with that. Really what we do is, here's your first late fee, here's your second, but then if we know they're going to go to auction, we massively hike up that late fee to try to recoup anything we can, which we never, most units sell for $50 and they're $150 a month. They're 3 months not paying. So all of a sudden our opportunity cost on that unit and our loss is very large.
Okay. So once, who gets that? That person actually gets the funds left over after the delta difference, they get the money?
We sell it for $1 million. We just made them a millionaire. We can't take it.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So here's the next one. Garrett is asking, what type of insurance do you need, and are you liable for the contents inside the units?
Oh, no. We are not liable for anything. So it burns down, floods, whatever. We don't, that's up to them. Once again, they're just setting it on our driveway. So if that's their fault if they wanted to do that. What we do though, is because reputation is everything. We basically make insurance mandatory for tenants. So when you come in, we say, you've got to buy insurance to cover your stuff. And they say, I don't want to pay for it. You say, that's fine. show me your renter's insurance. And if your renter's insurance will cover it, we'll let you go. Renter's insurance very rarely will cover it though. So then we just add it in and we say, no, you're going to pay for this. You're building it in. Then we offer things like boxes, and we have to buy property insurance, right? You get property casualty. So one of the things that we focus largely on is lawsuits. So we get good coverage. We're in the middle of one now. A lady never paid, right? We tried to get her on and on and on. She went, somebody bought her unit at auction for $20. And she came back to us and said, I had Beanie Babies in there that were worth $500,000, even though they're bankrupt. They went bankrupt, and they said that it was worth $500,000 and we owed it to them. We don't want to get caught in that stuff. So our insurance covers it and they pay, they take it. We don't even deal with it. So property casualty, right? That's the buildings, everything else, liability insurance, and then making the tenants make sure they have insurance. Those are standard practices in our organization.
Is there just out of curiosity, is there a revenue play to self-insure and then sell them insurance, or is that to get too tedious?
Dude, this is, yes. How do you know this stuff, man? You're not even in this thing.
I know a couple things, man.
So one of the things we did is we created self-funded pools where we insure out. So the loss ratios on storage units are right about 10%.
Okay.
So that means every month that person pays $10. When all the people pay, we know that on average, we're going to pay out 10% of those claims dollars if something happens, right? Well, instead of just giving that to the insurance company, we self-fund it. All that premium comes in and we keep 80% of it. Yeah. So it is a revenue play and a good one.
Yeah, no, yeah, very, very, very familiar with that model. And it does work. And it's one of the things you're running the masses. So it makes sense. Now, I'm sure that like if somebody has something ignitable in their self-storage, I'm guessing these are all fire suppression.
Yes,
and all that.
You can't have gas. You can't have anything in it. And if you do and break the lease and something happens, you're liable.
You're liable. So then
you
your
buy a facility down.
Would your insurance cover? Like if I had renter's insurance and
they'll go after them. Yep.
They will.
Yes, they will.
Wow. Okay, cool. All right. So next one, Stephen Smith says, how do you come up with the price for the units? That's the dynamic pricing that we said, right?
This is a great question. And this is where most people fail, because what people do is they say a 10 by 10, I look down the road and what are they charging? $50. Okay, I'll charge $50 and all 10 by 10s are $50. That's not how capital works. That's not how markets work. Supply and demand is very, very different. And two, if you actually look at the numbers, the last 20% of your tenants are the most valuable tenants you can ever have. So how you build it out and how we go with dynamic pricing, let's say you have an empty storage facility and right now the market's at $50 for a 10 by 10. Well, I start there, and as occupancy goes, and we predetermine if there's no square footage, we'll start higher depending on all those factors. But as occupancy goes up and depending on the people that are coming in, we increase rates. And so if every day you're looking at the fill up rate, the time, who's coming, where they're coming from, and we adjust prices accordingly. So when your neighbors are charging $50 for all their 10 by 10s, 100 10 by 10s, our average 10 by 10 may be selling for $85. And on gross, when you take that out, that difference is astronomical.
That's interesting. That's it. Yeah, it's very dynamic. It reminds me like golf, right? When you look at golf, you think it's easy, and then all of a sudden you start playing, and you're like, holy shit, this is hard. Like this is a lot more. This isn't the same, and it's not plain vanilla every time you play. And that's like that's what I was curious. How in depth is this self-storage world? And it sounds like it's very in depth and it's very intricate and detailed that most people would never think about.
But two, Steve, real quick before we answer the next question, we got to talk about this because that's where all the opportunity lies. You have to remember this stuff only started to change. We came out of junkyards, and up until literally 10 years ago, most people thought self-storage was junk. It was an asset class nobody wanted. And everybody just, the price, they put it, if you want to come in, here's the price tag, you take it, and they fill up, and then they don't want anything to do with it. So everybody's like, it's great because it's totally hands off. I don't have to do anything, but it's static. Well, if you take this static asset and put in this much more work, you're going to yield 40% higher returns. And that's how we built $100 million in assets, because we were buying and we were putting in this much more work, which in reality, all I was doing is finding people that were smarter than me to do it. And then from there, we could refinance, pull 100% of our money out and do it again.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I completely agree with that model. All right, so T. Hoover is asking, do you implement contracts or change your prices on a month-to-month basis?
T, yes, we do. So contracts don't change that often, but they're always going to be changing. Most facilities that we buy, their contracts aren't even valid anymore because of changes in laws. And we proposed a change in a state that we're in, and we took it and we got it passed. We had to work with the senators and everything. And the laws that they were using the last time they had been changed were in the 80s. There was no internet. There was no computers, nothing. And we had to give a public notice via, I don't even remember because nobody even used it anymore.
Like a telex or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you had to give it to the Pony Express, and the Pony Express will take it down the road. And those are the laws and still in a lot of states. So the laws are changing, so we need to update those contracts. But we have provisions in our contracts that state we can change it anytime. And once you sign the first one, you are automatically, we send an email blast our call, but I don't need to talk to you. I don't need to tell it to you. I can change it at any time. Now, the prices we change on a month-to-month basis, not normally, but we don't change as a group. Every single person that comes in gets a rate increase 6 to 9 months. So in my facility, every single month, something like 35% are all getting rate increases at different times and different levels. So every month, my revenue is slowly going up, 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 up. That comes into the dynamic pricing. You don't want to have flat prices.
Right.
Somebody comes in every 6 to 9 months, they get a rate increase depending on demand, where they live, all sorts of stuff will then depend on the rate increase they get. It's usually 6 to 12%.
And typically, just like I'm thinking in the real estate world, you don't want all of these leases to expire at the same time. I'm assuming you would be staggered because you don't want to have a big vacuum of revenue that all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, everyone's gone this month. So do you stagger those based on?
This is the problem with self-storage, Steve. This is when people talk about self-storage, and you're never going to find anybody. I mean, my book on self-storage is coming out this month. I believe in this asset class so much. But when you look at it, when people try to argue that self-storage is safer than apartments, because of like history, I say, listen, self-storage has had a lower default rate in the past than apartments and multifamily investors, but you cannot lie. It doesn't make sense because apartments have year-long leases. We can't. We only have, well, maybe we could, but nobody would take them month to month. So I could have within 4 months, I could lose every single 1 month. Every person could leave at any time. Right. So it's not, the revenues are not as secure as apartments because at any given time in an apartment building, I can tell over the next year if we got nobody else in and if everybody left, exactly how that revenue would play out. You can't do that in self-storage.
So let me ask you this. If that was the case, if I went to buy your company, if that was the case, I would look at that and go, wait a second. There's no value in these contracts because they're all gone in 30 days. So you said saying like normally you buy a company, right? You're looking at the term of the contracts. You're saying, okay, I have revenue for 12 months or whatever. I want everybody on renewed leases or whatever. But are you saying, you're saying you do month to month or you don't because of that reason?
You do. Nope. I've never seen a storage facility not. You basically can't. Nobody would rent. And
really?
So this is the thing that why I have. So right now in the marketplace for good facilities, you're seeing cap rates trend at or just above apartments. That doesn't make sense as a capital allocation to me because the risk is not the same. Now, the reason though it happens is because there's so much more upside. So what is its biggest downside is that it's month to month is also its biggest upside. Let me tell you something. I bought a facility at auction. This was 3 years ago. I bought a facility at auction. They had owned it, never touched anything, the rates, but it was all good. I didn't need to put cap. Well, I did. I had to build out the office. $150,000. We bought it for just under $4 million. And we put $150,000 into the office, but the contracts hadn't had rate increases. Nothing had changed for like 10 years. We bought it. The next day we sent a letter out. Our average rate increase was 67%. Some people got 175% rate increases. We had 30% of the population, our occupancy left. 3 months later, I'd filled it up and the facility was worth $8 million. And so, and that was on a higher cap rate than I bought it for. It was worth $8 million. So that's the good part about it though. I can make changes immediately.
Do you guys ever look at these asset classes as multipliers, as revenue multipliers, like 2x to 8? Is that ever come into play or not?
No, it really doesn't. How we value it is we do value it on a revenue basis. It is based upon, traditionally speaking, as a cap rate. But I have fundamental issues with cap rates because they're just made up, right? So some owners may say, yeah, it's a fat 5 cap, but I'm like, yeah, but you're including 20% expenses. And that's because the owner's doing the work and not including his income. When a storage facility has 35% expenses on average for a normal size 60,000 square feet. The smaller you go, obviously the increase in expenses go because there's not as much capital to go around, because the expenses in storage are very simple. You have, first of all, you have your taxes, you have your employee, you have your basic utilities, and you have your loan, and then some other ones, right? But it's 90% of your expenses are fixed. So if you buy a 40,000 square foot facility and a 60,000 square foot facility, the 60,000 square foot facility, all things being equal, will have better margins.
So what kind of staffing does a storage unit need? Is it and based on that question, what kind of maintenance are you responsible for as the owner?
Yes, great question. So staffing, so for us, we did we got beat. My buddy beat me by 2 weeks, but we were the second people in the world to roll out a true fully automated storage facility. What that means is that, and it's huge, it's 125,000 square feet. And what it means is that you can rent on an app. So let's say Steve's coming up and he's like, hey, AJ, I love you so much. I'm going to move in with you for 2 months. He's getting a storage unit in town, right? He can rent from Texas there on his app. He could show up in Idaho 4 days later in the middle of the night, open up a gate on his phone, walk over to his unit, open up his unit on his phone, put all his stuff in, close it, leave the facility, come back a month later in the middle of the night, take it all out, open everything, take it all out, and then check out and never even talk to a person. Now, with that said, we still have staff. So at that facility, we still have 2 staff people because it's so big. There's so much gross revenue. There's people coming in. It acts kind of like retail. But the smaller you go, the more those facilities have to be automated because of the compression in your margin, because the expenses don't fix. So once you get under a certain level, it makes it really hard to justify paying people because the revenue's just not there. Now, you'll always have to pay somebody to do work, but to hire full-time people sitting there, it's just, you can't get a good return. It eats up all the return. So we staff all of them, but
the automation like that reminds me of the mini fridges in hotels. You know, you take the booze out, they put, and then they come and they check it and they go, okay, this is what you use. So it's like, it's just systemized, right? Maybe it's different, but so what would you say, what is the ratio? Is it one staff member for X amount of square footage or one staff member for units or?
Yeah, that's a great question. Storage, we look at everything on square footage. So that's kind of how we talk about it. It's like revenue. So different from other real estate asset classes. When I talk about the change, so if I was looking at a facility and I said, what could I do? I say right now that storage facility is making 50 cents a square foot a month. I can bring that up to, we have month-to-month contracts, right? I can bring that up to 60 cents a square foot a month. So when we look at size, anything really above 60,000 square feet, it's usually 1.5. Once you get over 100,000 square feet, that can change. So in my fully automated facility, we have 1.5, but it's a humongous facility that would have probably required 2.5 without automation.
Got it. Okay. All right, man, these are good. I love these questions. This is very interesting to me. All right, so Garrett is asking a good one. What big mistake did you make on your very first self-storage buy?
What?
We all have them, right?
Why did you have to ask that question?
We all have them, man.
I want you guys to think that I'm just like perfect. My first storage facility was in a place in northern Idaho, there's more grizzly bears than there are humans. And it was a little small facility off a main road. But, when we were buying them for 15 caps, I thought, oh, what could go wrong? This is such a great return. So we bought it. And then found out nobody wanted to buy it when we went to sell it because it was in the middle of nowhere, next to the Canadian border in Idaho. So we actually sold it for $20,000 less than we purchased it for. I think maybe with our cash flow over the few years, I think we may have come out just a little on top, but we sold it for less than we bought it for. The reason being was I looked at the price. I wasn't active in the management, and I didn't analyze the economic revenue drivers. Those are all the things that make raising income or raising rents possible. I didn't analyze those in the market. And so our rates stayed pretty much stagnant. But for me, even though that was our first real one that, me and my partner did together, and we thought this is great, but it was still a diamond in the rough because the value was the asset, what we learned, not the individual property. So instead of saying this doesn't work, we said, man, we screwed up on every level. Let's go do it again and do it better. Our next facility we bought in under a year, we sold it for over $1 million more than we bought it for. And we were hooked and off to the races. And just every time we did, just kept improving. So the biggest one, I bought it in a market that I couldn't improve it. And the market itself wasn't going to lift up rates, or there wasn't going to be buyers. So the exit strategy wasn't great.
And so this is what you're saying is very similar to the apartment industry, right? I mean, in a way, it just when you're buying something, you can only, no one's, if it's renting for $50 a month, you're not going to get 500, right? Yes. I mean, it is what the market bears at the time. No matter how nice and shiny you make the doors and the locks and everything, it's going to bear. And I think a lot of people make that mistake buying apartments is they buy an apartment. They're like, hey, this is renting for $375. If I get it up to $800, it's like, yeah, but this area does not support $100. And exactly. I think, they talk themselves into the numbers to making this deal be so high. And all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, people maybe do 425, but they're not going to 8. And now all your numbers are blown because what you think and all the money you put into it obviously doesn't align.
You want to can I tell everybody my secret sauce for this?
Yeah, man.
Really what I think is I call it money on the table. So when you look at markets, there's certain assets in self-storage. This happens a lot, probably not apartment buildings. But when I look at a self-storage facility, I can look in the market. I can see what everybody else's price per square foot is. I can do a basic run of what else they're adding. And then I can say this storage facility today produces this revenue, but what the market is currently getting, the spread between what is actual and not, plus lines of income that all I do is just put in, is whatever that number is. I call it money on the table because the guy that owns it's just not taking it. Right. So that's not, I'm not saying, oh, in 5 years rates are going to go up, things like, I don't buy like that. I only buy at my known return, my exact know what the spread of buying and where it should be positioned is today. And I take the money off the table, refinance, and do it again.
Is there a rule of thumb when you're looking at a deal that maybe just from doing all these deals statistically, there is X percent that is not being captured by the existing mom and pop owner? Like you look at a unit and you go, okay, that's under 100 units. Statistically, that's about 8% that they're not capturing. Is it all over the map?
All over the board. Where I think most people, just what you said, Steve, is perfect. Most people come in and they want the asset to do something that the marketplace doesn't allow for, and they forget that the market doesn't care what they want. So you just have to know what is possible in that market, and then you find people that aren't getting that, and you go to them, buy them. Perfect example is if I'm buying this awesome facility that's a great, location, everything else like that, I'll probably pay less on a cap rate. Like I'm probably going to want a good cap rate on that. Then I'm going to find one that's doing a horrible job, because if I pay a 5 cap on the one that's doing a horrible job, but it has a 25% gap in between the market, Well, it doesn't matter because then I'm going to have an 11, 12 cap anyways when I'm done. But the nice, awesome facility, I have nowhere to go with it. And so it's, I need to get my value at the purchase price.
Man, that is gold information, man. I love it. All right. So let's see. Is there a potential for a REIT in this space? It's a good question.
There's 3.
Really?
So we have public storage. Well, there's more than 3. There's 5 now. But the main ones are public storage, extra space. We have life storage, a couple other ones. U-Haul, I guess, is technically one. And they are juggernauts, but they encompass 11% of the 11, 12. They've been moving up. They've been acquiring like crazy. But it's under 20% of the entire industry.
Wow.
But they're big.
That's interesting.
And they focus pretty much only on first-tier markets.
Got it. Okay. So I've got a question for you. When we were in Maui, and for those of you who haven't watched, AJ and I met each other at Brandon Turner's mastermind with Tarl in Maui, and we were all talking about saying no.
Yes.
And I loved how you say no to things. And we had this big discussion about how you say no to stuff. So you get a lot of opportunities, I'm sure. And that could get you in trouble because everybody wants to rub elbows with AJ. They've got deals for you. You see deals. You're smart enough to look at them. Can you explain how, especially with what probably is going to be coming in the economy and in the market in the next probably 12 to 18 months with just stuff happening, you are probably going to see, as all of us, a lot of opportunities and a lot of deals that are out there.
Yes.
Give everybody your insight on, and do you still do this, on how you say no and your methodology behind it? Because I thought it was profound how you said it.
So, when I really look at opportunities, my focus is I want to be able to say yes all the time. That doesn't mean that I do. I say no way more than I say yes. But when I'm looking at opportunities, when they come in, it needs to be a hell yes. And I need to, when I get them, I need to be clearing up everything that I can to make sure that yes can happen. So when I set up a structure, and then I actually have a kind of like a point system that I actually walk through to meet criterias. And then I try to increase my capacity to say yes. And that's something that has been a cornerstone of everything that we've done. And lots of times the opportunities tell you more about yourself than they do the opportunity. And once I realized that, I looked at opportunities in 2 parts. I have AJ, and then I have the actual opportunity, right? Most people say no because of them. I'm too busy. I got too much going on. I don't understand. That's crazy to me. That doesn't mean the opportunity's bad. So if the opportunity's good, I look at me and say, what's stopping me from doing this opportunity? And then I try to fix those things to do the good opportunity. Now, most of the time, once again, the opportunities are not good, which I've gotten very, very good at just saying no, quick and immediately. I do not waste time. They need to jump out. Like, I need the opportunity to say, this is awesome. And it needs to be a 3-year-old, right? So like Steve said, explain to 3-year-old. If I can't tell my 9-year-old son why it's an awesome deal, I don't do it, right? Because it means I don't know. And so, but if I know the opportunity and I know it's good, I move over to my category and I make changes to do more deals and to say yes more.
Dude, that is legit, man. I remember in Maui sitting there listening. I'm thinking, holy crap, man, this guy is so freaking smart, man. He even has a system for saying no. I'm like, this is amazing, man. Oh God. Well, AJ, man, I cannot believe we've been on for an hour. I'm very intrigued. I'm very interested in this whole thing.
I can't believe it's been an hour too. That's crazy.
Dude, I know, right? Holy moly. So, AJ, if somebody wants to talk to you about this more, or they want to find out, I mean, you said you got a book coming out and everything.
Yep.
How do they find you?
So you guys, anybody want to find me, you can go to Self-Storage Income. It's a site that I put up. It's, and then I have the podcast, Self-Storage Income, and AJ Osborne on Instagram. You can DM me. We put out, we didn't even get into this, but you can look more. So I became paralyzed for a while in the hospital.
Oh, that story's amazing, bro.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
And so when I was there, though, I made a promise that, what you guys are trying to learn, I went through that process and it saved me and my family's financial life. So I made a goal in the hospital that I was going to tell everybody everything, and I'm just going to give it all out. And I don't care. We have with podcast secrets. I put numbers, everything, so other people can do it. And that's my way of my second chance to live, to kind of give back. And we do in our podcast. That's why it's the biggest podcast in the self-storage industry, because we say everything, numbers, deals, exactly what to do, who to call. So any of those things, self-storage income, the website, the podcast, and AJ Osborne on Instagram, DM me. I'll respond to everybody.
That is awesome. And for those of you that want to hear AJ's story, you were on BiggerPockets with Brandon and David, right? Do you remember what episode that was? Or
it's terrible. I don't remember, but I do. They're releasing. I'm on BiggerPockets again, which will be released in 2 weeks on the 25th. So I'll be on BiggerPockets on the 25th too. But I think mine was
286. Nikki just said it was 286. Yes. So
thank you, Nikki.
If you guys, his story is truly, truly amazing. So if you have not heard AJ's story, we don't even have time to go through it. And it was, I was mesmerized just on the determination that this guy has of being a fighter. I mean, it's just, you hear the story and you're just like, holy shit. Like, is this real? Like, is this a real story? Like, this sounds like a movie. So yeah, whole other conversation, which we didn't have time to get into, but yeah, man, you are a true hero, bud. I'm just,
you're too nice.
I'm honored to know you, man. Cause you are one of those guys that's out there and you're like, holy crap, this guy's doing it, man. So
that's very nice of you, Steve.
AJ Stoke, man, thank you so much for being on. For those of you that want to follow me, I'm definitely not an AJ. You can find me on Instagram, Rozenberg Steve. And again, anybody who wants to know any of my stuff, which pales in comparison to AJ, but happy to help any way I can. But what were you gonna say? You gonna say something?
Steve's so nice and so humble. It's like Steve's obviously the coolest guy in the room. He's flying all over the world, everything else like that. I sit in an office and look at a computer. It's not like Steve's the man.
I do get to travel, but I was just in Amsterdam 2 days ago. So yeah, I do travel a little bit. Anyways, BiggerPockets, Facebook, thanks for allowing us to do this. BiggerPockets is awesome. If you want to go to biggerpockets.com. And again, you can find all the podcast shows. I was lucky enough to be a guest. AJ was, and they've just got a whole slew of people on their shows along with the Rookie podcast and everything else that they do. I'm just honored to be able to do this show and be a part of it. So everybody for watching, thank you so much. AJ, thank you again. And we will see you guys next week. Talk to you then.